Do you know when you mentioned you saw UFOs? Did you see
Yeah,
them whilst you was in Hawaii?
yeah, yeah. I've seen quite a few. I mean, too many stories to name. I do. So what I so okay, actually, uh, this is going back about 2 years ago. I was on um Mark Palmer Steve's My Family Thinks I'm Crazy. You guys know that podcast.
Yeah.
Um, I did an episode with him, and I talked about my UFO story that I had in 2001, no 2000, and then I came out. Uh, no, it was the next day. Sorry, the next day afterwards, and I'm looking up at the sky, and there's this glowing orb just stationary in the sky, like flashing, like this white orb. I did a YouTube video on it. I used my footage. It's not great. It's from my phone. Um, and this started a whole chain of events. So this is just one story, but this started a whole chain of events. So I made that video. And then a month later, so this is January of 2022, to put in perspective. February of 2022 on the island of Kauai, there was a UFO sighting, an object spotted. So they scrambled military jets and they go up there and they go, "Oh, it's just a weather balloon." Okay, but they didn't know whose weather balloon it was. And then in the following month, March of 2022, the news says if you see any strange objects in the sky, they're just weather balloons. This company, I forget what they're called, let out two weather balloons here on Oahu. And so I looked up in the sky and I saw what they're talking about, these weather balloons. And they were indeed balloons. They were kind of, floating around like they do in the wind. And I was like, that's not what I saw. But it was really strange because here are these balloons. It's almost like they're covering up for the video I made. I don't know. Or, maybe not just the video I made, because other people may have saw that original UFO. So this was 2022. Now you go back to, I guess it might have been later last year when we had that Chinese spy balloon come over America. And then they said they shot down three objects. They never told us what they were, but they shot down these three objects. And I'm just wondering, like, what is all this, And I've tried to make sense of it. Like, what I saw indeed was some kind of high technology. Not saying it was aliens. I don't know. But it was very strange. It went all over the skies and moved very, very different than anything I've ever seen. And here then we have later on this Chinese spy balloon, which was a stupid story. As we can, like the military actually shot it down with a missile. It's like they wasted like $400,000 shooting one, or $1 million shooting a missile through a balloon when they could have just shot it down with like a machine gun or something. But anyway, they waited till it went all the way through the United States to the Atlantic coast and then shot it down. Weird. And I don't know, again, this might lead into what they're this whole UAP rollout. It may just be this like drip drip programming that they want us to hear about these objects and just kind of get used to the idea. I really don't know. But that UFO I saw was genuine in January of 2022. And I thought it was very strange. And I had actually let Mark know that the day after I did that interview. I said, I saw another UFO. Can you believe it? And he's like, he thought it was pretty funny. But yeah, wild, huh?
That's crazy.
Yeah. But we have a lot of military out here. And so you have to think too. But so I bought these they call zero gravity chairs, and they fall all the way back so you can just look at the sky. And that's what I do now. I sky watch, and I've seen so many strange anomalies up there, so many weird things that couldn't be satellites. And so we got a lot going on up there, whether it's our own stuff, a mix of both, I don't know. It's definitely, there's stuff going on in the skies, and I recommend everybody watch the skies. There's more going on up there than ever before. It's just that most people don't watch the skies. They're busy with life. I get it, but there's a lot up there, you know, besides chemtrails. There's some crazy stuff going on up there. Satellites that suddenly shut off their lights, you know, or flash at you. You know, there's all kinds of weird stuff going on up there.
Yeah, I was walking back from the town centre here. Must have been about midnight, and it was a clear. Like I've not seen it this clear in England for a long time, and I've never really looked into the sky before. And I was walking with one of my friends, and he was basically just telling me some stories about the stars. And as he was telling us, and I must have looked into the sky properly maybe 3 or 4 times in my whole life, which is weird to say, but it's true. And I shit you not, we actually saw like it was a light that beamed across. It looked really, really far away, beamed across, and I was like, must just be a shooting star, right? And he was like, maybe you'll be surprised though with what goes on with the sky. And he goes, just keep looking, and we just stood there and we just kept looking, and then it beamed back the other way, and I was like, what? But then nothing else happened that night. But we can if you look for long enough, you can see the stars like sort of moving very very.
Yeah. Yep.
So that only happened was it like 2 or 3 weeks ago now. So it got piqued my interest into looking into the sky more from that.
Yeah, you should. I know it's getting cold and you might get a lot of rain, but when you get a clear night, it's totally worth it. When we were sitting out one night, I saw eight. I don't know how to describe it. It's basically like a orb came out of a visible hole in the sky and went into another hole, eight of them, one after the other, like almost like basketball hoops coming through and into invisible basketball hoops, just like these bright balls going. We're like, what the hell was that? So we don't know. And so I know that they have a lot of technology, and there's talk of the secret space program, and I'm pretty sure that is a real thing. When the Nazi scientists broke off, they gave us NASA, which is a facade, and then we got a real program going on up there with who knows what doing who knows what. There's so much to speculate on that, but certainly the skies are not boring, and more than ever there's more stuff up there. No doubt there's more satellites than there ever has been before, but I've done enough homework to know what a satellite is, and then know that these things are not behaving like satellites, at least some of them. And so there's some strange things going on up there, and I think that more and more people should be looking at the sky and just starting to document it, because we're living in those times that the whole dark world that used to be made fun of is now like coming out into the real world and emerging, and people, more and more people are starting to see it.
Yeah. It's yeah, we're living in a crazy time. Why do you think there's so much action in space right now? Do you think it's because, well, like you said, they've got the technology? We know they've got the technology. They say, what do they say? The technology they have, we won't see for 50 years. Um, so we know they've got the technology. Do you think they're fully immersed in space at this moment in time? Because from what we know, we have today, sort of thing. So what the normies know we have today, I can see in 50 years' time we should be a lot more active in space. So do you think they are currently a lot more active than obviously they're letting on in space?
Yeah, I do. I think so. I think they've been active up there for a long time too. I mean, whether or not we as humanity merged with some ET technology, reverse engineer their craft and got some of their technology, it's possible or not. We're definitely there's this technology that is being created that is almost unworldly, and it keeps on getting more sophisticated and sophisticated. And you have to ask, well, where is that coming from? Why hasn't it plateaued for them? I mean, our phones came out pretty exotic at first, And now they're just kind of the same thing every year. There's not much else they can do with it, but they're not giving us hardly anything. They give us those phones so they can track us. And a lot of the technology that we got anyway comes from DARPA. And DARPA is, an arm of the Department of Defense that has been developing weapons and crazy inventions for a long time. I think everything we're using right now is from DARPA. The internet, our cell phones, GPS, it's all from DARPA. And also the technology that came from the COVID shot is DARPA. So there's some crazy underground bases here on this planet that I'm sure they're developing all kinds of stuff at that is, at least like you said, 50 years ahead, if not more. And asking the bigger question, did it come from a more advanced race? It's quite possible. I mean, I know there's a segment of the alternative media that dismisses that aliens exist, and it even dismisses that space exists at all. And I think I think I recognize where these things are coming from, and I respect the questions and the critical thinking, but sometimes I think it gets taken a little too far. I mean, if you look at any of our ancient cultures on this planet, they all talk about returning someday, whether it's the Egyptian pharaohs, they plan to return, or the Mayan gods, so there's something with that. And I think we're living in the time that we might see some of this come. I mean, basically every crazy thing you can think of has been happening lately. Like the world is like the movies 20 years ago now in real life. I mean, it's unbelievable what we're seeing now. And I think it's all this ramp up to 2030. What is 2030? I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Like why 2030? What's so important about this year? And so they obviously have this, our elites here on the planet have this date, this 2030 year as a deadline for something. Why? And why are they rushing to put all this in? Why can't they just, it seemed like they were doing fine in the 80s and 90s when they were behind the scenes. You didn't even know they existed. You couldn't even convince people about this information. And now it's pretty obvious once you see it. So why didn't it work? Why didn't they just continue to be behind the scenes, slowly doing their own thing? They had all their child trafficking rings and all that all hidden, and now everybody knows about it. Well, a lot of people know about it. So it's weird now that they decide to show their face or their hand, and why they're rushing to get to 2030. And I even have postulated that they were sloppy during COVID even, it's like they pushed it too fast. It's almost like they're in a rush. And why are they in a rush? So those are all questions that none of us have the answers to, but it's important to ask the right questions sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it does feel like they've hit the accelerator, and there's a overload of conspiracies currently that they just follow one after another. It's actually somewhat hard to keep up with, because obviously you had the Epstein stuff, then you had COVID, then you had aliens through all that as well, and then obviously all the climate change stuff. It's seems like a never-ending list now, whereas it was a bit more contained before. That's actually yeah, it's, I know it's quite worrying, to be fair, to think what is going to go on in 2030.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, the reason I do my podcast, I mean, there are multiple reasons. But I do put out my own show. I do state that it's just to show people what time we're living in, to make sure that people know, like, we shouldn't just be comfortable watching TV every night and just going to work every day, going home and doing that. I mean, that there's more to this world. There always was, but this time we're living in, it's obviously no joke. Like, since 2001, I call this the century of psyops. Just psyop after psyop after psyop. 9/11, countless terrorist shootings and all these school shootings and you name it, all kinds of events. Like we've never been allowed to rest really without some kind of fear event since 2001. I mean, I was alive in the 90s as a teenager, and I don't remember there being that many fear events. It was kind of a big deal when OJ Simpson was being chased by the police on live TV. That was big. Oklahoma City was kind of a big thing, but like there wasn't a lot going on. And I grew up in the 80s as a kid, so all that in my life, like nothing was like fear event after fear event till this century hit. And so that's why I've been calling it century of psyops. uh I think what's kind of interesting too is just 4 years ago they were screaming to be scared of ISIS in the news, and now look how that's lost its weight. Like you talk to people about that now, they're not scared of that. They're just scared of whatever the media is trying to scare them into right now. And of course, the media is the mouthpiece of the government.
It almost feels as if it's to desensitize us, but to an extent that they've got this grand finale, which is going to, I don't know, sort of come out in 2030. And because, right, with the fear side of things, you can only scare someone so much before it has to progressively get worse, before people stop being scared altogether. So it worries you as we've had a worldwide deadly virus. That's what all sorts of films scare you about that. We've got the fear of AI again. Hollywood scares you on that as well. So what is this grand finale going to be? Because it has to be excessive, right? Or people aren't going to be bothered.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what is this grand finale? I don't know, but I like to come back to this, and it gives us more power, because I never like to bring people into fear and despair, and that's not what I get on the mic for. However, I do like to cover some of these things because it's important. But like one point that I like to bring up is that they're afraid of us. They're actually afraid of all of us coming together, realizing the lies, and actually acting upon something, because they have to dumb us down so much to keep us where we're at. They have to put food additives to make us stupider, fluoride in our water and our toothpaste. They have to spray the skies with things that affect us too, frequencies, constantly having us looking at screens, giving us, all kinds of different information that they want us to believe that's probably, has its own resonant frequency with it to keep us in fear. All these things are to keep humanity from becoming its full potential. And that means they're afraid. They're afraid of us coming together and being sharp-minded and understanding a big picture and understanding what they're doing. And so that always gives me hope that they can't hold humanity in that position too long. And in order to hold them there, they have to constantly be giving us bombardments of and injecting us with stuff too, of things that keep us on that lower frequency. So I think that's a good thing, to know that they're afraid of what we could actually do. And that gives me hope, because then more people can realize that you don't have to be afraid of these people. You shouldn't. Those people that dyed their hair blue because they feel like they're going to get hit by a directed energy weapon, they're coming in fear of these people. We shouldn't be afraid of these people. We should be empowered to know that we're awake in these times and come together. And obviously, you want to do it to where it's peaceful protests, as far as like non-compliance, just peacefully non-complying with them, and they can't do shit once we just say no, enough of us. And that's always been the problem, is there's just not enough of us, and there's a lot of people that are too afraid to actually non-comply. And I think if more people got on that side and just said no, the magical word no, we would have a a change on this planet, and we wouldn't have to worry about their 2030 agenda.